got a switch on it where it won't let it start up because you don't want you running low at all?
Yeah, it just completely shuts off the start system.
Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah. Let me walk down to the corner and get some oil so I can get the car started. Right now, that truck that I'm driving, which is my son's, which I'm slowly but surely getting pieces of parts replaced on it, POS. But it's got a sending unit leak right now. And it's actually showing me the proper readings, but whenever I get in the truck, it actually tells me that I'm low, not on the light, but it tells me that on the dash, check your oil level. So in other words, if you're too low, it's gonna come up and say, low oil level, check oil itself, which is cool, you know. Some cars do that, some cars don't. Some cars, you wait till that oil light comes on, it's too late. The engine's probably already run by then. You know, now if it comes on and you see it and you pull over and fill up with oil, you might be all right. But driving very long with an oil light that's on, if it's low on oil, that low on oil, it's got to have the issue. Right? Okay. What are we doing when we're checking something for resistance?
Turn off the circuit.
Yeah, the circuit has to be, the power has to be removed, right? Yeah.
And then you switch it to the horseshoe, which is closed. And then make sure you don't have things in the edge. You want to go on the right side. Connected to where you test all the truck on that.
Right.
But you put it at the top and then ground for non-case.
What are you talking about? I'm lost.
You wire the DVO and then parallel.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now, I need you to understand that if you're working at 12-volt circuits, you don't need to be digging out that test light. Right? Because if you're at 5 volts and you're using a regular 12-volt test light, you're going to let smoke out some. Always use a DVOM that reads volts. Now, if I want to check it, what's a diode?
It's a one-way.
One-way gate that only allows it to go in one parallel flow in one direction. It's usually about 0.5, okay, that you'll see on the screen, depending upon circumstances and heat, okay? But you should have a reading that you can visibly see as a number in one direction. You put the leads around, then you should get OL, right? Everybody understand that? If you're getting reading in both directions, it's shorted. If you get a reading of 0.0.0 and 0.0.0.0, what is that? You're getting reading in both ways, it's shorted. Now, if you get a 0.0.0 and a number, and then flip it, what happens then? What should you see?
Is that your little bit?
You got 0.0.0 and then you got OL, and you flip it, what should you see?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's working?
yeah. Okay. Now, diodes are very seldom used, but they are used whenever there's a possibility that we don't need all the voltage we started with. The good one would be your air conditioning compressor clutch. You turn it on, you use 12 volts, but once it's on, it's magnetically held in, so you don't need all the voltage. And if you let it go without a diode, it's going back to the switch, because every time we light something up or we use power on something, it goes back to the ground, and by the time it gets back to the ground, there's nothing left to go into the battery. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What did I tell you was the numbers for checking a sulfate? Somebody explain to me what you're doing during a battery sulfation or a 3-minute charge test. Tell me.
Oh, yeah. I charge it for 3 minutes and then test each individual cell. Yeah, I can take that.
Should it be like 1.2?
You mind if I tell you?
Here's my plan.
1.1.
You take the battery cable loose, you take the clamps off. You don't wanna put 40 amps on that thing and test it, there's no sense in it. You could pull the negative cable and put it on there and do it that way if you wanted, just on the battery without the negative attached. Put your clamps on there, you set it on 40 amps, you take your DVOM and put it on volts. You stand it up there so you can see it. You make sure the red lead's touching the positive post and the black lead's hitting the negative post. Get you a watch or a clock, make sure you can see 3 minutes time. You turn it on 40 amps and you turn the on switch on. You're watching for that voltage to go over 15.5. If it goes over 15.5, what's wrong?
There's short in the battery.
Sulfated. So basically what you got is no lead on the plates to hold the charge you're trying to put in. So it's never gonna charge. I mean, your battery charger will charge and it'll just keep charging and charging and it'll never get better. Because what holds the charge in your battery are the plates and the lead that's on the plates that holds the charge. And if you get a battery that's ran down, charged up, left off for a while, then ran down and charged up, these batteries get sulfated before they get anything else because of the way we use them. So if you hook up a battery and hook up a tester and a charger, and you exceed that 15.5, the battery is a POS.
So a deep cycle battery resists sulfation.
It would be better, yes. That's the way it's supposed to work. When you do a deep cell battery, you run it all the way dead, then you charge it up and charge it up slow, right? Put a slow charge back in it. That battery was constructed to be able to do that particular thing where regular batteries aren't made that way. Does everybody understand me?
So question, with that, is it better to trickle, if you have the time, to trickle charge a battery rather than jump start?
2 amps. Take the surface charge, get it where it needs to be, then put it on a higher amps, then go back before you finish, put it back on 2 amps and finish it off. That's the best thing you can do to your battery. If you sit there and crank 40 amps on it, you're just hurting the battery, you're tearing the battery up. Same thing you do when it won't start, take my battery jumper cables and put it on there. Well, now not only are you putting alternator full charge, at full state of charge, you're also putting all the amperage right in on top of a dead battery. That don't help them any either. So if Addison's is out at Jansen's and he's got a car that's gonna sit in the bay till a part comes in, the best thing you can do is the customer's coming to get the car after we made the repair, and the battery goes low, charge that puppy. Don't jump it right before they get there, because now it's damaging the battery and wearing out your alternator. And it's gonna be in constant full state of charge until that battery gets up to its limit where it kicks it out. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Load test, capacity test. That means that we have to have 12.6 volts, right? If we're not at 12.6 volts, and when we do that test, depending upon the tool you're using, some of them will not let you load test that until the voltage is at 12.6 volts. Because they know the situation.
Some of those chargers too, don't they?
Huh?
Some of those chargers.
Some of them, yeah, that little short red roll around we got over by that line machine. Excuse me. If you hook it up and it sees that you're fixing to do a load test, it's gonna charge it until it gets to where it needs to be before it does a load test. The big tall machine we have that you two have already used, same thing. If you hook it up, the second it starts checking the peaks, it'll say this ain't gonna work. It's gotta charge until it beeps, and then you can proceed to your test. Are we good with this conversation? Yeah. Yeah. When we were talking earlier about making something work, and we were talking about being voltage left over, there's a very good possibility of having voltage left over after a headlight's done its job. The headlight's constantly going to be full of voltage. So what's going on? The little bit of voltage drop left is going down the frame, right down the ground cable, back into the battery. By the end, there's not enough voltage there to cause an issue with the battery, right? but you probably won't have enough power left to light it. Very doubtful, right? We can do an experiment. We can go out there and hook up one light bulb and put 12 volts to it and check it. But I guarantee if it's grounded down there and you check it, it's gonna have at least enough voltage to light that test light, because you're basically hooking it up in parallel, because you're hooking it up in the power side, right? Do we understand that? Because you're hooking it up on the wire, you got enough there for 2 light bulbs, 3 light bulbs, 4 light bulbs. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. But the second we get on the ground side of that, if that circuit's made right, I don't think you'll have voltage enough to light that light. But we can go test that right now. Okay, let's go. Let's go see what it does. You just sit there and take it easy. I know you're not all there.
So I will subtract this, from that, because this.
So at first, yeah. So it was like,
I
they
think,
went,
I think I did it.
I was like, they went over like a month. I'm like, 62,000. I thought you had to do that one. The first one that set, I was like, sorry.
So,
I've been in making this couple of superstars. And I'm like, hey, this is the way to listen to a song. You know, did you see what it says there? See what it says there? I got it. It's on now.
So Stephen Zane. Tomorrow, we've got an alignment we have to do on that Toyota from Mr. Carlos. I'm not going to be back tomorrow, so it will allow us to do that. So, listen to me, please. Zane. There's two ways to check to see if a battery is being drained on when everything's shut off. Can you tell me how to do that? Mr. Williams, can you tell me how to do that?
You can use one of those conductive testers that will tell you where you can unplug the negative cable, put it on amps, and then get the series with the negative cable.
Awesome. Okay. You could also use a test light and have one of the little conductor deals or a voltage, an amp meter, right? You just pull your cable off, set it off to the side, put your clamp on your post, put the other one into your loop that goes on the top post. Let it lay there. If the light lights, hey, how you doing? If the light lights, then you've got to draw. Sit up, Brett. Brett, sit up. Please, my superintendent down here.
But with
Now-
that, you won't know how much draw.
You won't until you check it. Okay, but if that light lights, it's too much.
But with that, you said what, the computer take 30 minutes to shut down or anything that's auto save?
Yeah, and it'll be on for a while. On that truck, it won't be on very long because there's no memory. Okay, so if you walk out there and check that truck and you pull the cable and go between them with the light, which you can do that on that truck because there's not a computer to begin with. Okay, you aren't gonna hurt that truck by making the memory get lost. Does that make sense? But you can with a car that does have computers, because there's computers all through that car. They tell me, and this is what you need to understand, anything more than 35 milliamps is gonna cause an issue of battery drain. So the best thing to use is the DVOM with amps in series between the buttons. And like, that tells you for sure. But you have to wait and watch, because everything in there's gotta go night-night. And it could take an hour for some of those things to say, I'm asleep now.
You said 35 million?
Yeah. Okay, so we got that. It ain't gonna hurt you to walk off and come back and check it. You could be working on other things. We come back and look, and if that number's down, you're good. You're in. We had that problem with our Chevy truck, and it had a fuse that was shorted out on the radio. Still having issues, okay? It was dragging the battery dead in the wedge. Maybe what's going on with the envelope, because something's going on with the envelope, because you can charge the battery up, go back out there not long, and it's dead again.
How do you start tracing that?
Pull the fuses. Now listen, you need to unhook the switches on the door you got open, or close the door. But if you need to get the fuses inside the car, what are you gonna do? You have to pull some connector to turn that light off, or it's gonna show you there's a drain. But let's say that we got the light disconnected on the inside cab light or the Curtis light. I pull that loose, still got a light draw, or still more than 35 milliamps, and everything should have been dead by now, an hour and a half later. You go to your fuse panel, you needle those pliers.
Just one by one until you.
One until you find out what it says that circuit is, and go find out what's going on. Could be a glove box that's not getting shut completely, or a switch that's pushed out, not being able to push the all the way in. Could be a number of things. Could be a trunk that's got one of those mercury switches on it. That's supposed to be like this, and it's moved down like this, and it stays on the whole daggum time you got the battery in the vehicle. Those kind of things happen, but that's how you do it. I walk by that forum, so that's a good thing for us to talk about. Okay? Now, Hunter, what is a fully charged battery voltage?
12.6.
12.6, and what's each individual cell supposed to be?
2.1.
2.1, okay? So if you're doing a load test and you're putting on half the co-cranking amp for 15 seconds, and it shouldn't fall below what?
9.3.
9.6 in 15 seconds doing co-cranking amps, then you've got a battery that's no good that falls below that number. And it depends on whether it's on co-cranking amps or whether it's on cranking amps, because one of the specs are different.
The one, what, 30 seconds?
One's 30 seconds and it's 7.3, and it's gonna change on your co-cranking amps, and your cranking amps are gonna be a different number. You have to load half of it.
But you do half of both? Whichever one you're doing is half?
Half of that number, yeah. Co-cranking amps or cranking amps, it'll still be half, unless you're using a tool that you're forced to put it in yourself. So our little white lightning that you guys, everyone in here is done, okay? When you hook it up and you push that number to put your co-cranking amps in, when it load tested, it's loading it to half. We got that?
Yeah.
If you're doing it on a manual machine where you have to turn the knob, then you're gonna have to do that yourself. You're gonna have to load it to half that number. Almost every one that we've got out there that's got a knob where you turn it is gonna be your load to half the co-cranking amp. The other ones, you put that number in, like the big tall one, you put that number in, you put the number in, it's gonna cut it in half and it's gonna load test by itself. Yep. I'm trying to think what else I can tell you that I think possibly have enough issue. We understand that resistance is the opposition to flow. What could cause one headlight to be fine and the other headlight to be dim?
Grounding issue.
Grounding issue could be even, listen, it could be corrosion in one wire going to that light where it's split off. It could come off parallel to one wire over here, one wire over here, right? And this one's got a good wire from here to the power supply. This one over here branches off. It could have corrosion on that one side. dropping part of your voltage just to one light. So it could be dim as well. Yes?
Yes.
So the best thing you can do would be to check the voltage to each side of that light to make sure.
Pull the light out, check it.
Yeah. Correct. Okay? And if that's the case, then you better go looking for ground. Because 9 times out of 10, when we have dim headlights, it's a ground issue that's worked its way loose. Alright? God, there's a million things that could be on that test.
How high do you have to score to pass it?
65, I think.
How many questions are you usually on?
Usually 50. But don't be surprised if you don't see some simple questions on it. Like, what is the 10th digit in the VIN number for?
Motor.
Some freebies.
Okay, and then a number could be,
So, seeing those on the electrical test?
yeah, because they're gonna be on all those tests. Because they want you to know, if you're working on any car, what the engine size and the gear model. Yes, sir.
Is your Sunday working?
Let me look.
Shoot, that's scary.
Who? Oh, she's here after somebody. Athens Edge, you're wanted. Yes. You better be nice to that lady.
Figure it out. You gotta call for the service.
I'm trying to get it.
Like I thought you were about to get.
I'm trying to get grades so I can do plans of study for one that left. I can't get on it at all.
Let me check, it'll take me just a second. I had to put in a password this morning for Mr. Carlisle. I swear to God, it was almost not big enough to get on the screen.
Yeah, ain't no way I can do that.
I'm thinking. Okay, those guys are fine. I'm covering electrical because these guys are testing tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
So, Canvas. Is it letting you in?
No,
I'm talking to GoForce. Is it not letting you in?
I'm in Canvas right now.
I'm in. You can try reconnecting to your web.
yeah, I did that.
Yeah, he's smarter than I am with computers, which wouldn't be saying much really, but he's better at them than I am.
Yeah, I'd like to do it all of it.
Yeah, that's one reason why I'm putting cars and internet, and computer stuff, but I need for
I like working on the old stuff.
right. Drinking beer will work a little bit, drinking beer work a little bit. You didn't hear me say that.
What?
That's right.
You didn't hear me shake my head either.
What am I on?
I just talked to Natalie.
Yes?
And she said that, yeah, you can give him yours, I can't give him mine.
That's crazy.
Just says, it just goes, it doesn't go anywhere. It just goes quiet. I even went over and just hit Cengage just to get in the book.
You let you in your, does it let you in your email and stuff?
Yeah. I keep my email up all the time, because, you know,
Yeah, I'll get surprised by something we should have been doing.
like those 2 or 3 from Terry Gray saying there's free food, but we can't go get any of it.
Yeah, if that's as nice of them as can be.
Yeah.
Or having a 7:30 breakfast that you can get, if you can get up there, but what are you supposed to be at 7:30 doing?
Yeah.
Accepting students in your program? I did not see that. And I did tell her that Dee and I and Rick need exposure to the Skills USA information. I'm tired of guessing what might be on that test. Get me somewhere where we can get it. It's not the same as it used to be. What color shoes you supposed to have on? Blue represents this. It's all different now.
Oh, is it? Oh, we need to test the practice test.
Yeah, we
Did you
need
see ASC, a practice test is $25 now?
They say practice tests are. You can't even go in there for free.
It says on that, I was on there yesterday, and it said practice test $25.
I just got another phone call in here. 3 of them. What the heck?
Oh, we're called whoever this back there won't.
Hang on, let me check it.
Wow, looks like Mike's engaged.
Yeah.
Just like it.
No. Alien 1. That's great. Let's see, God, Walmart, my medications, and toll-free call. And then Rick.
Go find out what he wants.
Well, that's good. I think I told him, I called him.
Oh.
Alright. Alright, so, Zane, what did I tell you? What are you supposed to do if you got a hot top post battery? And you wanna pull it off and it's not computerized, what can you do? Check amperage.
Check amperage.
Amperage draw, battery drain, what can you do?
You can take the negative post off, hook the DVO out into your amps, and then hook the negative to the negative and the positive over the post.
Which post? Negative post?
Yeah, connect in series.
Yeah, between the two?
Yeah.
Good. Alright. Alright, guys. Go for it, did you get all your stuff done?
For all my assignments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adam, are you okay?
What's wrong?
I understand. Brett, Zane, and Mr. Waller.
You want us to do something? He said, go for Zane. I mean, you can go out with this if you need to too. He might have said your name.
I'll wait.
I heard 2 G's.
I did too, I don't really know. Where in the world have you been?
Yeah. Yeah, Thomas, I almost asked him if you left. I was confused as to where the hell you went to.
Bullshit. You might only been used the bathroom tonight. Damn kids.
Why, did you time it?
No, I went in there at 11 or 12, 2:30. 12:30? No. What was for lunch today?
I didn't have lunch.
Oh, neither did I.
I'm on every medicine now. I can't eat anything.
Damn.
You can't eat anything. You know, medicine.
I just don't have an appetite.
It must be nice. I wish I didn't have an appetite. Slip back down into a piece of ass. Would be 150 pounds. Man, I was sexy. Got fat, lost an inch of dick.
Damn.
I know. It's a cruel world.
I didn't even know that could actually happen.
Yeah, your dick's only so long, and then you get fat right here.
Actually, good point.
Yeah.
I see what
lost
you're
an
saying.
inch.
I see what you're saying.
It's a real problem.
Yep.
Just wait till you get old.
That fucking sucked.
Took my 6.5 down to 5.5.
Damn.
Yeah, I couldn't afford to lose no inches.
Only back and pull that out.
What the fuck?
Don't work for me. Now I gotta be a missionary all the time. Anyone tries to ride, it falls out.
Damn.
Good.
Huh? Why you just be what person?
The grumpy person. It's your first day back.
I am grumpy. Can't eat. Hey. You. Good part of the conversation about 10 minutes ago. It was 10 minutes ago. That's a 2 minute. Two minutes ago.
What you was just talking about?
I have no clue what I was talking
Oh, yeah.
about. They got me on some happy.
What conversation was on 2 minutes ago?
Huh?
What happened 2 minutes ago?
Said he lost size.
Science? You know me, what I used to talk about. Food cars are my day.
Oh, you talking about little fatty?
Yeah. Well, it's meant to something. I got fat, lost the whole way.
We're talking about that one day. Can't afford to lose this different.
I like it. It keeps falling out now. Guess I got a small hands. I don't mind that, it's just bruises. Yeah, the bones, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Steven, the bones hit you right here. You have bruises from hitting that shit too hard.
So that's skinny, you gotta be gentle. Not yourself.
I'm daddy now. I don't think I've ever seen you in anything except jeans. No. It's weird when I show up in normal clothes. There's everybody on. That all wearing, we're recognizing college and wear stuff like this to class.
That's why I'm so.
Hey, you did this, right? Okay, so that says graduate how far out of this, so do I add those together and you get the maximum and then subtract that from that?
What?
You wanna pick up my shit for Saturday?
Yeah, 30 over.
Where?
That's good, yeah.
No, I don't wanna work there.
Please.
I don't even have a food handler.
That sounded desperate.
You don't have to.
Sitting people down at the table.
How much does it pay?
$10.50 an hour.
More than what you're making now.
Bitch, you don't know what I'm making now.
Nothing. You can still do what you do now and work a regular job.
That is, no. I can't work in customer service.
I don't have a food.
I can't say that, I've never worked anywhere near for food.
I'm too bad at telling people to fuck themselves. I've heard worse. Honestly, yeah. Think of what you're doing.
Thomas.
Why you want somebody to come work at Mexico Judge?
I just did this one week and everybody's sick.
I wanna go work for them in 6 months. Quit. What do you need money for?
I just looked at mine.
Like what?
A new car. Or so.
What that you need?
No,
Oh,
not
wagon.
I didn't say mine was a station
You okay?
wagon. I just said he could buy a wagon. I don't drive a station wagon. I drive an
Station
SUV.
You got a what?
I drive an SUV.
You talking about a station wagon out there? I thought it was a truck.
Hunter's good.
So you guys are arguing again?
Not a truck.
It's a station wagon.
SUV.
It's a freaking car chassis.
It's not a car chassis.
It's a car chassis.
It's not a car
It's a car chassis.
Okay, so
Wait, no.
It is. Hey, what's it listed on all that?
truck.
Not even an SUV.
If it's listed on there as truck, it's a truck frame.
It is a truck.
But
All SUVs are on small
It's
trucks.
classified as
Something that was
stationary.
proceeded.
It's classified
By
as
Ford.
SUV.
I would like them to.
No,
It's an-
that's what they put on the brochure to get a man to buy it.
No, let me look, just, what is it?
It's a truck on a title. Even the title says it's a truck.
You can either be a truck or a car on the title.
No, you can have SUV.
No, you can't.
And you can have MPV.
Okay, all data. What year is it?
It's 2014.
2014 what? Fourplex?
Yeah.
What's wrong with it?
Black.
It's a station wagon. That's the problem.
It's a
with
Ford,
that.
that's
Flex?
Yeah.
No,
It's a truck.
they're pretty nice.
They are. Nothing's wrong with it. He wants to call it a wagon. And it's not
You
a
just
wagon.
want to admit what it is.
It's an SU, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I'll say
It's
it's
a
an
station
Hey.
wagon,
It is a truck
Technically,
classified.
it's a truck.
but it's not a truck.
It's
Name one truck thing about it.
You
the
can argue
size.
that point.
The size,
Yeah, look at
the size.
the length of it.
My Toyota's a truck. That don't mean crap.
And I bet my Flex is just as long as your Toyota.
It is not the size that matters, but I bet my
keep
Toyota
telling
is
yourself
shorter
that.
than your Flex.
It's listed under truck, so
Yeah,
it's probably
the
got a
title.
truck frame.
The title says it's a truck.
See,
I
you
mean,
just
it's gotta be over a
believe
certain weight, it's gotta be over a certain.
believe what everybody tells you, Stephen.
No, I believe what I see and right.
I believe what I
I
see.
mean, I get what they're trying to say.
I know what he's saying.
And that's why I
It's a-
compromise
it's a-
and say it's an
it-
SUV.
It's considered,
It's
an
a station
SUV or
wagon.
It's an SUV.
It is a station wagon.
No, there's a difference between
It
an
says
SUV and a station.
The Ford Flex is a full-size crossover SUV or wagon.
Yeah, I know, I Googled it. That's when I said, okay, I won't call it a truck, I'll call it SUV, but it's not a wagon.
It's a wagon.
It says it's more known as an SUV.
Alright, so I need Tyler Trace, I need Thomas, I need Haley, and I need Steiner Wade. Because we're gonna talk about some things right now that you need to be paying attention to. Because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, some of you are sitting there fiddling your fingers just that.
That's me, sorry, sir.
It's more considered a minivan than it is a wagon, apparently.
It's not a minivan. Minivan's the
It's
sliding
just a-
doors. Box segment for
You can just slide into a Ford Flex.
Is there even a deal for
You have to install it
minivan?
yourself.
What? Classification?
Minivan's gonna be,
It's
actually,
SUV.
minivan's gonna be under truck.
Yeah, I think they classify them as like MPVs now.
What's the difference between a minivan and a regular van? Both like the same
The
size?
minivan is a
Yeah, a
minivan.
small van compared to like a
It's-
conversion
a minivan
van or
is a
small
small cargo
combine
van.
van.
That's
Oh,
why you got the sliding door on a minivan.
Yeah.
SUV is a truck height, truck chassis, truck everything. But it's four doors with a hatch.
So what about an Econoline van?
yeah, what about,
Econoline van,
They don't have sliding doors, they have folding out doors.
they haven't made a freaking Econoline in 40, 50
They
years.
still make them.
Bullshit.
wait, are they still like the same size though?
What, the
Are they?
Econoline vans?
No, like an Econoline and a minivan?
No,
What
the
they
Econoline
No,
is a
typically
no, a
make?
minivan is a smaller, big van.
It's a normal.
It's
smaller,
the
normal
mini.
size.
I know, I get that, but they both look the same size.
It's like you compared to us, Steven, you're many.
But I don't look the same size as y'all.
That's what I'm
Exactly.
saying.
But
Because it's not the same
looks,
size.
but the minivan looks like the same size as a regular van.
But it's
That's
not.
understood.
Here you go, buddy, it's not.
So what do you want to know about? Give me one. 20 what? Tell me something. What's minivan? Caravan?
Grand Caravan.
Build Grand Caravan, Dodge.
A Honda Odyssey.
Have you seen those vans that are like,
They stopped making
They're like the
Econoline vans in
touring vans.
2015.
you know, like the touring vans? How they're
Like
way
Warriors?
bigger than
Hey,
minis?
I just put in here Dodge. It shows me nothing but a Challenger, Charger.
Yeah, the main thing.
You start
And it
typing in Dodge,
it
it's
doesn't
like
show me-
Dodge dash why is my transmission on the ground?
Wait, so like the express vans, like big.
So look, I look
Like
under
the
truck.
FedEx vans and all those.
I look under
Those
truck
are vans.
and it's got,
She wanted to take photos for the Meridian page. See, like this is a van.
What you doing in that? What is the
These
caravan?
are vans.
They're way the caravan.
Oh,
Like you can stand straight up in the, which is a van. Look at how sick that is.
I love this train.
But it's not
They are.
listed
That's
on
a van.
cars.
Now you already see a
We're gonna have to
minivan.
go up here and go under.
Cargo van versus
Minivan.
We're gonna
They're
go
small.
under.
You can't stand straight up.
Drink.
I mean, I got it. It's fine.
There you go.
See, like minivans are smaller.
So it's saying it's a truck as well?
Hold on, wait. But what
So
about
minivans are listed, oh, they're on truck frames.
about wait vans?
Grand Caravan.
Those would be good.
Well, I guess you just actually like these. That POS that I worked on the other day.
Wait, so what an Astro van?
That had a fuel pump in it that I was on the
Grand
ground.
Caravan.
Yeah, wait.
Huh?
Trying to watch ice cream truck.
We're
An
okay.
Astro. Yeah,
Yeah,
No,
my
that'd
wife,
be
Got another kid you need.
the Astro.
yeah, I tried to get my wife to
That's
do
the smallest van.
trying to
like
buy a
the
high-end,
Astro.
Toyota, what's the high-end Toyota?
SUV or truck?
Lexus SUV.
No, Sequoia.
Forerunner, Sequoia.
What is, there's another one, it's not the Sequoia.
There's the Highlander.
The Highlander. I tried to get her to buy a Highlander, that was the very biggest Highlander you can
That's
get,
it.
and I had it picked out, I got the price down to where I wanted it. No, let's go look somewhere else. And she ended up with Camaro.
Those are.
All because she, no, yeah, it's just like you drive it down the road on a normal road, and you hit the smallest of bump with Firestone run flat tires, it's like driving your spine to the back of your neck. There's just no suspension there.
Like peanut butter.
It's a bad deal.
About that, hitting something with the run flats.
Oh. So, I want everybody to listen, because I want to ask you some questions. Now, hopefully you paid attention yesterday when I talked to you.
I didn't, I wasn't here.
Okay, well, do the best you can, because if you're the brake man, like I think you might be.
Brake man.
All right. Abacus,
1924.
how many different different rotor categories have we got?
Rotors, got non-vectors and vector, and what's the other one?
Very good. I did get that across to somebody, right? All right, Jade and Golf. How many cuts do we have minus the non-directional do you have to cut a rotor?
Say that again?
Minus the non-directional, how many cuts do we make to cut a rotor clean?
I don't remember that one.
2, what are they?
Your rough cut and your finish cut.
That's right, rough cut and finish cut, ones that's like 15 to 20,000, depending upon how much metal you got. If you got a lot of metal, you gotta get it off quick, you go ahead and crank that up a little bit. Okay, and then you're gonna be 2 to 5,000 finish cut on a slow cut to get a good cut, make sure it's doing its job, and then you got the non-directional cut. Right?
Yes.
We cool with this conversation? Stephen, do you remember that? Okay. Now, Stephen, don't get mad, I'm not picking on you, but I'm picking on you. What's the job of the metering valve?
To make sure that there is a, like, I don't know how to say this.
I can tell by what you're doing with your hands. I know you got what I want you to say, but you're not getting that in your mouth.
Yeah.
The metering valve controls what?
The hydraulic fluid.
That,
To what?
to the rear front brakes.
Front only.
No, front only.
Metering valve, when it says metering valve, my God, they're talking about the front brakes. You need to get this in your head, because if you're gonna take the brake test, that's what they're saying. We're talking about a metering valve. They're gonna ask you a question about, is the front of the car tucking down? What is the job of the metering valve? The metering valve is to meter fluid to allow the front brakes to let the rear brakes catch in before the front brakes, so that all the front brake work's not being done by the front brakes without the back brakes helping. We got that? Good. So the metering valve is going to meter the amount of fluid pushed to the calipers.
So should your car not dip in the front at all, or just not?
No, it's gonna dip, there's no way around it. But if you got a metering valve that's bad, and you hit the brakes, it'll do this right here, you'll notice that you feel like everybody's gonna come right out of their seat. Okay, that's the difference. The proportioning valve, its job is to, on cars without analog brakes, even with cars that's got analog brakes, it doesn't matter. You're not supposed to be able to drive down the road at 25 miles an hour ever and just lightly tap the brakes and the rear brakes like that. If they're doing that, then the metering, the proportioning valve is messed up. They're not ever supposed to lock up unless there's something malfunctioning. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have grease seals leaking or brake fluid leaking out of your calipers or rear wheel cylinders, because that can happen as well. So when I have this happen, and I've had it happen on shop trucks, because we're always using them to pull things around with and do different things with. And our S10 pickup used to be driving down the road under normal speed and go to slow down, and that some buck will spin sideways, locking the brakes up. The proportioning valve is out for lunch. It's not. But before I could condemn the proportioning valve, I had to pull the wheels off, make sure that the wheel cylinders were working, make sure they weren't saturated with grease. Because saturated pads will do the same thing. But the chances of having both sides of the drum brakes with leaky rear wheel cylinder seals or brake wheel cylinders leaking, slim to none. But you always check that first before you condemn the proportioning valve. Everybody got that? Yeah. What other type of proportioning valve do we have other than just a hydraulic type? This
Height sensing proportion.
awesome. And the height sensing proportioning valve, you're going to be able to see most of the time it's on trucks. The Toyota pickup's got one out there. It attaches the body or the valve of it attaches to the frame. It's got an arm that comes down and attaches to the rear suspension, rear axle. And when that weight changes, it changes the fluid flow to the rear wheel cylinders. Because when loaded, you want more fluid to be at the rear wheel cylinders. Does that make sense to us? Yeah. What does the pressure differential valve do, Brett? Pressure differential valve, what does it do? Pressure differential valve, because it's a good.
Does it keep the pressures equal at each, or not equal, but where it needs to be?
It is a chamber in which fluid comes into from the front and the rear, or left front, right rear, left front.
That's what I was talking about.
That senses the evenness of the, yeah, that's the different one. You're right. The
Doesn't want it equal.
pressure differential valve should have even pressure for all four wheels. And if it's not, the valve moves, turns the light on by grounding the valve inside and making the brake light go on, telling you that there's an issue with the leak in one part of the circuit. What other circuits tell us that? Today's cars have got several different ways of telling you that the brakes are bad, other than just running out of fluid and not having brakes, right? The pressure differential valve will do that. But we also have master cylinders out there with sensors in it. When the fluid level gets low, it makes that light come on. We also have some cars out there with disc brakes and a little bitty stinger that comes in that's going to touch and ground out a wire to turn the dash light on, telling you you're out past.
Yeah, for like electric.
Yes. You understand that? Okay. Here's something you don't want to hear, but I'm going to tell you anyway. There are two types of emergency brakes that are used with disc on the back. How do they work? What are they? Somebody tell me.
Oh, there's the internal ones inside the actual disc.
There's a top hat. There's a top hat rotor.
Yeah.
It's got another area inside of the disc, right outside the plate area, right in here, that when it slides on, it slides over 6 to 8 inch size brake shoes. And then when you pull on the emergency brake cable, it pivots out like this. That's typical thing to happen.
Isn't the other one inside the caliper?
The other one, you have a bolt that goes into the back side of the caliper piston. And when you pull the emergency brake, it pulls it up this way. It has a lead bolt that goes into the back of the piston that's sealed because it comes through the back side of the caliper. And when you move that lever, it screws the piston out and applies the emergency brake.
Say a lead bolt.
Yeah, it's not a lead, it's a It's a steel bolt.
Does that one have a hose that goes through?
But,
Doesn't that one have a hose, the hose that goes through?
oh,
The brake hose? Or is it not?
no, it will have a hose going to the caliper, but not to the emergency brake. It's using that metal bolt with threads on it. Literally, when you do this, it takes that piston and screws it out this way.
Are those pistons you have to screw back in?
Yes, the pistons, it's got little grooves in them, so you go with your tool in there and screw them back in.
It's also-
When you're doing that though, I need you to make sure you don't screw them in too far and then expect to get a pedal, because you won't. Then you'll think the master cylinder's bad.
How far do you screw them?
You screw them in so you can slip your pads in there, is what I always do. So in other words, I back it off, try to slide them on. Back them off, try to slide it on. Right? And then once it goes on there, it's gonna wear out to the point where it wears down enough not to be a problem, right? Screw them in, put them on. When you get them there. If there's too much of a gap there, my suggestion is to screw it back out a little bit. Because I've seen the lug nuts call a customer and say, well, gee, we didn't need a master cylinder before, but now we do. It's because I can't get my back pistons to move. Well, the back pistons won't move because they're only allowed to screw so far to begin with. They're only going to be allowed to come out to make contact. Anyway, they're only going to move about that far. And if you've got them that far away to begin with, there's no way in hell you're going to move enough fluid to get them to come out to the point where they touch the rotor surface. That's why you've got to just put them on there, slide the caliper and pads on. If it slides on there real tight, go with it, because it'll wear in to the point where it'll be fine. But if you go much more than that, you're gonna have a problem with the master cylinder being able to apply that. Now, what I've seen people do is pull that lever off because it's a hex steel. It's got a hex head. You pull the lever off, right, and adjust it a little bit, or turn your bolt a little bit to match it as well. But the best thing to do is just adjust the piston. But we're good with this conversation. Okay.
Now, you said if you went too far, screw the piston back out. How do you screw the piston out?
That way you screwed it in.
No, because the one on the flex, it has like a bevel edge. It has two beveled edges, so you can't go the wrong way.
Many of them I've ever seen you screw them in or out.
Oh, you're wrong.
Because it has to screw back out once. And just.
Has to screw out to be able to put your pads clamp on.
Also, to
I was just saying where that tool went in.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. No,
get your
it
pistons
should
pressed,
screw in.
you have
If
to.
it screws in, it should screw out. Yes,
So if you're dealing with one of those, you have to, and you want to push your pistons in to get your new brake pads in.
you can't push the pistons
Yeah.
in, son.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to take the pads out of the way, screw the piston in, put your pads back in, slide it down, hope it's tight, so you can get it back on. Okay? Listen, I've been called at 9 o'clock at night by kids going, I pulled the rear calipers off and I put new pads in, but I can't push it in far enough to get the caliper to go back on over the rotor. I'm going, does it have a lever on the caliper? Yeah. Well, you're not going to. You're going to have to screw the piston in, period. They won't go back in. There's a bolt sticking in the back side. It can't go anywhere, so the second you twist that bolt, it's either screwing it out this way or screwing it in the other way. Yes?
So can you screw that piston back in from the back side of the caliper?
Yeah. You may have to help it along a little bit. You might have to spare channel locks. You can physically move it with the screw. You do that, and your lever is all the way back here, and it needs that full throat to apply it, you're just screwed up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. So my suggestion is to screw the pad back, the piston back in, get you a little bit of clearance, then you should be good. You may even hear them dragging a little bit, that's fine. Okay, we cool with this conversation? Okay. I've seen people that don't know any better take a big pair of channel locks, put it around the piston and screw the piston in. That'll work as long as you don't screw up the seal and the boot. Okay? It's amazing. So Stephen, Zane, there are two types of rear brakes, or two types of brake drums, so systems. What are they? Can you tell me?
Duo, servo, and I know it, don't tell me. Leading trailing.
Leading, trailing, and a servo. Which one do the most movement? Duo servo has all this wrap-up action, right? Leading, trailing does this. That's it. That's why you can use those on analogs. You shouldn't find duo servo on any cars now that's got analog. Most of them now have what? Disc, right? Yes, sir. Survive it? Okay. No, I understand. We're just getting ready to take a test tomorrow, so we're hitting the high spots and low spots for what I expect they're gonna see. Do you guys have an ideal or remember how to use a micrometer?
Yes.
Yes.
What's a micrometer?
I know for a fact you know that.
He's going through a lot right now.
Yeah, I'm going through a lot right now.
I know.
My brain is crazy.
I understand it. Now,
What?
My brain is crazy.
I want you to make sure before you go up there tomorrow, even if you gotta look it up somewhere, make sure you understand that each tick on your barrel is gonna be 1,000. It takes one complete rotation to be 25,000. It takes 4 complete rotations to be 100,000, right?
Yes.
So if you go 3 complete rotations past 25, that's 75,000, right? And then the first tick would be what? 76,000. Correct? Okay, that's all there is. They're provided in quarters. What's the difference between that and a metric micrometer?
We don't use metric micrometer.
Metric is measured different.
Metric is measured difference, that's my point. How are they measured? Halves and 1 inch, halves and 1 millimeter. Another half and another millimeter. So when you spin it all the way around one time, that is half a millimeter. When you spin it around another time, that's 1 millimeter, right? You spin it around another time, that's 1.5 millimeters. Right?
I don't know, I don't think we learned that one.
Yeah, that's for the Nazis and the Jats.
It's, okay, then we want to learn how to do it right now. So, listen closely to the fat man. If I turn it one complete round, I'm gonna be on, and back on 0, because there's 50 clicks, 50 lines on a metric micrometer. Yes? 50 marks, not 25 like on a standard micrometer, there's 50 marks. When I go to the first click on that, what?
Half.
Yes, when I go one complete round, that's 1/2 of a millimeter. You'll see a half line, then you'll see a tall line. So it's 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2. If it stops between 1/2 and 1 millimeter, whatever number shows up on your barrel to your 0 line is gonna be added to your 1/2 or your 1. Yes?
So it'd be like 1 point, whatever that number is.
So if you have, let's say that you're 1 millimeter and you're setting at 23, that's 1.23 millimeters. If you go past the 1/2 to 1.5, and you got a 23, what is that?
73.
1.25 inches.
Yes, 73. Don't be bringing the other thing in, you're gonna confuse everybody. If you're on 1.5 and you're on 23, you got 73, 1.73 millimeters. It's easy, right? You're not on quarters, you're on halves, right? Think of the one on the standard micrometer as quarter, a quarter, a quarter, and a quarter, right? When you get to the 4th quarter, you got $1. Anything in between those lines, you gotta add to the quarter you have. So you're gonna have pennies, right? 23 pennies added to your quarter line would be what?
So the quarter line?
Yes.
48.
There you go. That's all there is to it.
So there-
But you have to realize, we have 1 to 2 inch micrometers, 0 to 1 inch micrometers. Okay, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, right? So you have to start that number with whatever you have. So if it's a 3 to 4, our first number is going to be 3 point whatever we have on the barrel.
So when it comes to millimeters, what's the difference there?
That's a very easy one as well. They're going to run from 0 to 25 millimeters.
So if you roll it over twice, you add 1 to the 25, or whatever.
No, you start at 1 and go into 25.
So there'd be like.
If you're all the way out, you would get 25 millimeters. All the way up to the last number, the last click, it's 25 millimeters because you started with 0, right? Does that make sense? And then if you got a 50 millimeter, you're starting with 50 and going out to 75, and 75
So they have
to.
1 to 25, 25 to 50. Okay.
Does that make sense?
And then you just add to those.
Add to what's on your barrel to what you got.
That's.
There you go. You're liable to see that on that test. That's the reason why I bring it up on the brake test. On the brake test. No, don't give you, I don't mean to give you a brain fog, but if you decide to take a brake test, that's how you do it, because I got 3 or 4 that need to take a brake test. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think. Well, one of them's gone. 1, 2, 3, 4, but one of them's gone. That's awesome. So 3 of them. Okay.
Jackson hasn't even been in brakes.
Well, I can't help what Bert Jackson asked to do. Okay, I figured he'd do suspension. All right, so when you take that micrometer, you need to understand, you've got that little deal at the end of the micrometer, so when you spin it, it's gonna freewheel. When it's freewheeling, that's not gonna tighten it up any tighter. Don't grab hold of the barrel and twist it, or you're gonna mess up the micrometer calibration. Yes?
Yes.
What do you use to make sure that the micrometer is calibrated?
Calibration stick.
Calibration stick. Can you do 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch? So you put it in, you open it up. If it's a 1 to 2, then you're gonna have 1 inch stick. You're gonna put it in there and you're gonna turn it to 1 and make sure it lines up on 0. Yes?
Yeah.
Everybody understand that? Is it that bad?
It wasn't pleasant.
Good spaces. All right, so, Zane, and go for it. The RAV will not crank. Do you understand that? Go fix it, but don't fix it, but tell me what's wrong with it. Go,
Play around.
get your glasses on right now. Oh, shit, it's time to go.
Yeah, I thought it was like,
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk to you. So if I got a 0 to 25 millimeter, is everybody listening?
Yes.
'Cause I don't like being on one, listen to me and listen to me, talk to. If I've got a tick showing short little line and it's on 0, that is a 1/2 millimeter. It's on 0. If I got the next line that's longer and it's on 0, that's 1 millimeter.
Oh, you're talking about as far as on the.
The metric micrometer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you know if any of these guys over here are testing tomorrow?
Ryan Williams doing suspension, but we haven't talked about suspension at all. So haven't gone over suspension much, other than just being in suspension, we talked about it, so. All right, yeah, just send Ryan down here for a few minutes, but we'll talk about suspension for the rest of the time. I can talk about it that night. All right, so we'll wait till Ryan gets here. And then we'll talk about suspension a little bit. Some of you know suspension because I've been preaching about it for quite some time now.
Hunter's the sweetest kid on this damn
Wow, I
planet.
haven't been in
don't know
here
what
since
you're
last
talking
year.
All right, listen up. Now, so let's go, let's do this. Inward or outward tilt to top as compared to true vertical is what angle? Camber. Do we understand that? And camber does what if it's not in specs? Wears tires. And if the camber on the left front is higher than the camber on the right front, in other words, it's higher with more positive than the right front, which way is the car gonna pull? To the left. It always pulls to the side with the most camber. Yes? Now, caster. Who can tell me what caster is? You can't see caster unless you take the wheel off and see how much it's leaning. But you can't measure that unless you got it online the machine. Okay?
Challenge.
Huh?
Is that a challenge?
Sure.
Okay.
Now, here's what I want you to understand. We've got several ways that we measure caster, but there's always one way that has to be done to get it measured correctly with the new machine. That is, you're going to get all the sensors calibrated, then you're going to take the wheel and turn it all the way out till the green light lines up with the green cavity. Then you're gonna turn it all the way back the other way till the green line lines up in the cavity. Then you're gonna steer it back until it lines in there, and then you come straight forward. The last swing will have measured your caster. And I need you to understand, you never measure caster without the brake pedal depressor, without the brake pedal depressor under the brake. Why? Because the tires roll back and forth and it changes your readings as you turn the wheels. The best way to do that caster swing is not to be in the car. Because if I do the caster swing and I'm standing on the side of a car, it probably won't be able to read because my body's in the way. Okay? But you can do the caster swing by standing up close to the car like this and turning it like this. We have had people sit in the car, but we usually put lightweights like Haley in there and let her do that. Okay, because it doesn't affect it enough to screw it up.
Mr. Shields, while we're on this, there's a quick way that me and my boss do that doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. Is putting finger lengths either in front of or behind the tire and then doing it with the other side. And if you, we mainly use it to see if the subframe may be tweaked or something. If you can fit your 3 fingers straight across on one side, but on the other side, you can only fit it fingers like this. There's a difference there.
Between the tire and the bumper, or
Yeah,
tire and the.
Yeah, and in the wheel well, between the tire and the back side of the wheel well or the front side, you can do it that way too.
Yeah, there's always ways of being able to check something. Like if you've got something you think is big, you measure one side and look at it and see where there's a point you can measure to that should be guaranteed the same distance from here to here. It should be the same distance on the other side from here to here. So yeah, that's part of that stuff that I'm gonna talk about when we get into that Hunter alignment stuff that's advanced, about how to make adjustments to cars that's got the geometry changed or been in a wreck. We'll talk about that later. That's a little deep for us that are just now getting ready to do it. Okay? So back to caster. Caster does what? Caster controls the way it drives down the road. Caster does not wear tires. Okay? And caster affects returnability of the steering wheel. And if the caster is not in spec, it won't return right. And if caster is off more than the desired cross caster, then the car will pull to the side with at least a non-positive caster. Got that? Okay. So you ought to be able to look at your specs and see right now by looking at your specs what that car should do. The easy one is camber. If I'm real like this on the left front and I'm over here like this on the right front, it's pulling to the left. No doubts about that, right? If this one's standing straight up and this tire's leaning in, which way am I going? I'm going left. That's not rocket science there, guys. Okay? But on caster, you need to understand that the caster with the least amount of positive is going to pull to that side.
Another way to look at it, my boss analogy my boss likes to use is imagine a traffic cone. How you have the tip, and then you have whichever way the tire is leaning, you spin the cone, and that's the way it's going to go. So
Right. I use like a cup like this. It does the same thing. It's going to pull that way because of that, because of the way you got that angle set. So toe in we all know about. Toe in simply the distance between the front of the front wheel and the back of the front wheel. If that's not in specs, it's going to be an issue. That's what you're measuring. But you're also comparing the two front wheels to the back wheel. So as I've told this group before, when you're measuring to do a four-wheel alignment, you must do camber, then adjust your toe, and then adjust your caster on the front, in that order. And then you adjust camber, then you adjust toe. That's the proper order of doing it, because if you adjust caster after camber, it will tweak your camber. You don't want to do that. Everybody understand me on this? Okay. If you do a perfect alignment and you can tell it's in spec, what kind of alignment machine do you have, Rhino?
Couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay. And that, I'm not real familiar with that one. Is it red?
The old one was. The new one that we have, though, is 15 grand. Is not. It is blue and on a cart. And we just have like the four heads in it.
That is a more than likely a Napa or a Snap-on, which is sold through Napa as a Snap-on.
It's neither of those.
I
But
don't know. There's only 3 or 4 different alignment machines that's worth having. It's the Hunter and the Snap-on one, and I don't know what else the other one is. But I don't ever use anything to do alignments other than Hunter, because they're world renowned in alignments. There's nobody that beats them. So the only thing that I have wrong with Hunter is what you see a while ago. If I got a 2017 update, when I buy the machine, I buy the software, but when I update the machine after it has not been updated, supposedly I can use that machine till 2017, but I won't be able to line anything after that until I bought the new update.
About how much of the updates?
Well, that's just the problem. With that machine that I've got right there, at 2017, they won't let you use those sensors and still be able to do that alignment. So you would have to buy new sensors and new software to put into that machine, when that machine now is only worth about $500. Does that make sense? And they're 15 to 25,000 for a new machine. So the best thing I could do would be unbolt that one from the ground, put it in surplus, and sell it to somebody, but they're gonna get the same problem, because you won't be able to use it because it's not letting you use the specs.
Yeah, but it'd benefit them. They don't have to pay for the price. All they gotta buy is heads and software.
Yeah, but the thing is, the problem with that is, you're still gonna have to buy this sensor heads and the update and whatever it takes inside that computer to be able to do that. And from what we've seen, it's not feasible for us to do that. We'd be better off just getting rid of it and getting another one for the price. So that's kind of where we're at. And at that point, since we got the new one, the problem we're having right now with those 2 alignment machines is we weren't sure at the time when we started the new machine up. They didn't calibrate the new machine right. And we were using the old machine, so we pulled the Toyota and put it over here, and the difference between the readings on the new machine compared to the old machine was way off. So we called Hunter back in and we said, this isn't working. You can't tell me that this thing's sitting at 8 degrees positive cast. Shouldn't have that much. And sure enough, they come back out and their calibration on the brand new machine was way off. And I knew it was, because when Mr. Carl and I were sitting there and they were putting the whole machine together, I looked over at the machine and there was that much daylight underneath the wheel of the cabinet. Now, when you got sensors up here mounted on this beam, on top of this cabinet, there's no way you can have that much movement and get that alignment right. It just doesn't happen. So we had a guy come out, circle the areas on the ground, show us where to put the machine. So when Mr. Carlock comes back tomorrow, we're gonna put the heads on, we're gonna roll it forward and see how close we think it is now compared to what it was the last time we used it, because it was definitely wacky the last time we checked. It was way off. So I think it's good now, but it definitely wasn't when they got their okay to be leaving the first time, which we should have never said, okay, you're done. Because we ended up having to call them back and say, okay, we need you to come out and check this, and don't charge us a service call because you never got it back the first time. You have to be assholes.
Things like the Wi-Fi company that came and fixed my Wi-Fi.
Well, Mr. Carlock put my hand in it from, he quit buying line from
Peace out.
certain people for that reason. Because when the machine ran